Seong is a broke, socially awkward loser who works as a convenience store clerk. His life takes a wild turn when he accidentally knocks out a pro MMA fighter during a brawl, catching the eye of a shady fight promoter. Now, he's thrown into the world of mixed martial arts, where his opponents hit harder than his mom's disappointment. But before any of this, at a convenience store, a retired baddie throws a pack of cigarettes on the counter and asks for a refund. Seong stays calm and asks for the receipt, which makes the woman lose her cool and she starts making a scene. Seong explains that he needs the receipt to make sure she isn't lying, but the woman says she already thrown it away. Seong replies there is no way for him to know if she bought it cheaply somewhere else and is trying to make a profit. Hearing this, the woman shouts again and asks if he is calling her a cheapskate. She then says she is going to file a complaint because he touches her without permission. Later, Hwan walks into the store, but Seong tells him to go home and rest because he has a bruise on his left eye. However, Seong is impressed to see how he manages sports, part-time and school at the same time. Seong asks him if it's really fun to keep getting hurt, but Hwan starts acting like a circus joker and says it's addictive. He then questions if Seong really wants to compete in MMA, calling it a woman-beating sport, but Seong responds that all martial arts are full of violence. Feeling excited, Hwan says that the Elite FC Amateur League is opening this Sunday and he is participating, but if he wins, he will debut as a pro. He invites Seong to come and watch because it's more fun to see cheeks in real life than on TV. The next day, Seong arrives at the fighting arena but hesitates to go inside, feeling embarrassed about his ugly clothes. Not knowing what to do, he calls Hwan and asks if he can come out to meet him in front of the gym. However, Hwan refuses, saying he can't leave since the match is about to start. Seong then asks the guard if he can go inside and the guard happily lets him in. After stepping inside, Seong looks around and finds this place poorly managed. Despite being a competitive place, it's disorganized and messy. He thinks about staying to watch a few more matches but quickly changes his mind, deciding it's best to head home early like a scared cat. However, just as he is about to leave, he catches sight of the massive muscular fighters going in the arena. For a moment, he just stands there staring at their well-built bodies as if he is about to join them for the after party. Afterward, Hwan and the others walk up to Seong, who is standing alone, just watching everyone else. Hwan jokingly asks if he's still hesitating like a femboy, but Seong sighs and replies that it's just because this place feels so unfamiliar to him. Even so, Hwan asks him about his opinion on this place and if he finds it amazing. But Seong is that usual boring guy in every function. He replies that it's intense here. Just then, Hyung tells Hwan that there is no time for him to talk about anything because he has a match now. He then says that they should celebrate his victory later if he wins a match. This dude is more confident than Diddy is with his baby oil. Seong then admits that his opponent has a better physique and might even be stronger than him. However, Hwan doesn't seem to care at all and just heads straight to the ring, and then the announcer introduces both fighters. In the blue corner, representing his team, stands Hwan, while in the red corner, there's an ugly-looking guy with crooked teeth named Saab. The bell rings and the match begins, and without wasting a second, the crooked guy charges at Hwan with punch after another, but Hwan managed to dodge each one of them like his soul got exchanged with Muhammad Ali. Saab suddenly throws a punch straight at Hwan's face, but Hwan takes it without flinching and immediately punches Saab right back, making him look even uglier. Meanwhile, Seong wonders if he is acting differently from his usual self because he seems to be rushing things too much. Saab then shouts at Hwan, telling him not to rush. But before Hwan can react, he takes a straight punch to the face. Saab then charges at him, beating him so badly that Hwan is left traumatized for the rest of his life. After the fight, the announcer declares Saab as the winner, but Seong can't help but think about how Hwan couldn't handle the damage to his chin and ended up losing before even making his pro debut. Seong is shocked to see Saab sitting on top of Hwan, throwing punches like a maniac. When the referee steps in to stop him, reminding him that the match is already over, Saab just shoves him aside and continues his relentless attack on Hwan. On the other hand, the crowd starts to worry about Hwan because, at this rate, he might not be able to hold on much longer. Just then, Seong suddenly throws his jacket aside like Bruce Wayne and sprints toward the cage. He jumps inside and grabs Saab by the neck like he's some kind of pet and tosses him away like a trash basket. Afterward, Seong worries about Hwan's condition because he has lost consciousness and is just lying there like a lifeless fish. Seong shouts for help while Saab just stands behind him, completely silent after getting his bum beaten. He then lunges at Seong with a punch, but Seong swiftly brings both arms up in front of him and dodges it, though the impact still pushes him back. Saab doesn't stop. He keeps attacking non-stop and asks who Seong thinks he is to barge in and interfere like some stray cat. However, Seong is still blocking every move of Saab, but then Saab attacks him with a knee strike which even shocks the audience, wondering how he can hit a normal person with such a powerful knee strike. Just then, Xiao's manager rushes inside the cage and tells him to stop because suspension isn't going to be the only thing for him this time. He might get his cheeks beaten in jail. Even so, Xiao doesn't stop and follows up with a knee strike to Xiong's arm. Just then, Xiong gets into his fighting stance, and without hesitation he swings a powerful punch straight at Xiao's face, which knocks him out cold. Afterward, Xiong asks H1 if he's okay, as if he didn't just knock out a fighter with a single punch. Before he can process what's happening, people suddenly leap at him and all the security guards grab hold of him. Frustrated, Xiong tries to explain that he was the one being attacked, yet somehow they're the ones restraining him. Later, H1 and Xiong sit together in a park and Xiong asks about the result of the match. H1 tells him that Xiao was permanently banned from the fighting championship for breaking the rules. Xiong then asks if this means he's going to debut as a pro now, but H1 just laughs it off, saying that winning like this doesn't make him the better fighter. He also admits that he hasn't even thanked Xiong yet for saving him when he passed out. Regardless, Xiong asks him if he could have taken the time to rest and recover, so why did he want to see him? H1 responds by saying that he wants to meet because he has something important to discuss. He then asks Xiong why he has never considered taking up boxing. He gives Xiong a card to the person who is interested in him. Xiong looks at it and realizes that the card belongs to Zhang, the director of the fighting championship. H1 then explains that Zhang was impressed after watching Xiong take down Xiao in the league and now wants to turn him into a pro fighter. Nonetheless, H1 decides to share his backstory about why he started boxing, but it turns out to be even more boring than a math class. He simply watched a boxing match one day, thought it looked fun, and now he just keeps getting his cheeks beaten. Then, Xiong stands up and tells H1 that it's already late and that he's going to be busy starting tomorrow. Meanwhile, director Zhang asks his low-life nerd assistant if he knows who the most talked about person in this season's Central League. The assistant replies that it's a regular guy who knocked out a professional athlete. But Zhang confidently says that he's going to hire that person, although the assistant argues that Xiong just got lucky by landing a punch on a worn-out fighter. Zhang disagrees, explaining that while Xiao may have been a troublemaker, his resilience was still top tier. He suffered a lot of damage during the match, but for a non-professional to knock him out like that should have been impossible. Back to the present, Xiong sits with Zhang at a cafe and asks why he wants to train him as a wrestler. Instead of answering, Zhang simply pulls out his phone and shows Xiong a picture of him making out with Xiao. Zhang explains to Xiong that the uppercut in the picture is perfect, but Xiong just shrugs it off, saying it only happened because he was lucky. However, Zhang knows better, shifting weight onto the left foot, concealing the right foot and generating more rotational power from the upper body and waist isn't something that happens by luck. Still, Xiong tells him that it was both the luck and he was aiming at him. He explains that he was beaten up and then he saw an opening and went for it. Zhang wonders that he saw an opening and gave him the punch. He finds Xiong a mentally sick retard and asks what if he has done any sports in the past. Furthermore, Xiong explains that he did 3 years of baseball in elementary school, and he did wrestling for 6 years. Hearing that, Zhang asks him about why he doesn't try the MMA. But Xiong replies that while he is interested, he's concerned about the financial side of things. He understands that a pro debut won't happen overnight and that preparing for it would take a lot of investment. He doesn't want to put any more burden on his family. Zhang reminds Xiong that he once said he needed $1,000,001 every month, then tells him that he'll cover all the money for him. He explains that they will provide him with all the equipment, and if he's working multiple part-time jobs, his income would be about the same as a social worker's. Xiong, however, isn't convinced and asks if Zhang is really offering this for free. Hearing that, Zhang smirks and tells him there's a catch. He has to pass a sparring test, and if the CEO likes him, then he's in. Xiong then asks Zhang about the sparring match, and Zhang replies that it's scheduled for 1 month later at H1's gym, where Xiong will also be training. However, Xiong isn't interested in waiting and confidently says he wants to do the sparring test today, instead acting like he's Khabib or something. Afterward, Zhang asks Xiong why he insists on taking the test today and reminds him that MMA isn't as easy as he thinks. However, Xiong confidently replies that it doesn't matter whether it's today or next month, he will always be the same. However, Zhang straight away tells him no because he wants to find him a sparring partner, and they will conduct his test a week later and tells Xiong that he is supposed to learn the basics to take any kind of test. Zhang then mentions that the test will take place next week at 3 p.m. and reminds Xiong that he still has a chance to back out if he isn't completely sure he won't regret it. Later, Xiong goes to the Team Attack gym, and when he enters the room, he finds a bunch of muscular-looking guys working out. However, H1 arrives and asks Xiong why he's just standing there instead of letting them know when he arrives. Just then, a man steps forward and introduces himself as Hoon, the coach of Team Attack. He asks if Xiong is close to H1 and then mentions that he heard from Zhang about Xiong taking the test in a week. But H1 tells him to get his training clothes and get ready for practice, but Hoon thinks it's a waste of time. wondering what he can learn in 1 week's time, and that's the reason they will do what's going to be necessary. He then asks Seong about what he thinks is the most important in a match, but Seong replies that it might be a punch and it's the correct answer. Hoon explains that MMA strategies are diverse, but dealing damage is the most fundamental and essential part. Yob tells Seong that the first thing he'll learn is the jab, then proceeds to demonstrate how to throw a proper punch. However, as Seong watches the demonstration, he finds it unimpressive, thinking it looks lame and clumsy. Then, Yob throws another punch with full power and Seong immediately thinks this one looks way cooler. But before he gets too excited, Hoon steps in and tells him that he will be learning the first punch, whether he likes it or not. Moreover, Hoon explains that the second punch used in boxing might have a clear target, but the opponent would stand close to him in MMA, so it's not effective and MMA stance is lower and legs wide apart. Next, Hoon explains the straight punch, which needs to be combined with the jab. This means Seong has to throw a jab, quickly retrieve his fist, turn his waist at the same time, and then use his other hand to strike. Afterward, Hoon tells Seong that's all for today, but Seong isn't satisfied and wants to learn more, and seeing his eagerness, Hoon tells him that if he can master just these 2 moves, then he's already halfway there. Afterward, Hwan turns to Hoon and questions why he even bothered explaining all that to Seong, wondering what he could possibly gain from such basic instructions. Hoon simply shrugs and says that he doesn't believe Seong will learn anything, insisting that there's no way he can master these techniques in just a week and he's guaranteed to fail the test. Both are left completely stunned as they turn to see Seong furiously attacking the punching bag like an absolute maniac. His movements are so precise and flawless that it looks as if he has spent thousands of years training, and at this rate, he might even surpass Sung Jinwoo himself. Afterward, Seong begins practicing his kicks while Hoon holds the pads for him, observing his movements carefully. But after a few attempts, Hoon sighs and asks if Seong is trying to perform ballet, pointing out that his kicks are all over the place. He explains that a proper kick should be sharp and precise, comparing it to a fly landing on his toes rather than just throwing his full strength into it. He then tells Seong that instead of blindly using power, he should focus on picking a target point and striking with accuracy. Just then a homeless-looking fat guy comes and asks who this crazy guy is, but Hoon replies that he is the kid which he talked about over the phone. Hoon then introduces the man as Guk, a supervisor. Guk looks at Seong and asks if he likes MMA. Seong simply replies that it's fun and that he often watches the tournaments. Then, Guk tells him to do his best so that he can get good results, and then he leaves. Later, Seong realizes that he only has 1 day left, but he still can't do a proper kick, and he starts to regret his decision for asking to take the test in a week. Just then, Guk arrives and asks Seong about what he is doing here this late and asks how his kicking has been like. Seong replies that he couldn't understand it, but Guk tells him to try kicking once. However, Seong suddenly tries to act like Batman and kicks the punching bag, but Guk immediately points out that he's terrible at it. He explains that Seong is only using his legs, which is why his movements are so slow. Guk decides to step in and demonstrate, delivering a powerful kick to the bag with such force that Seong is instantly reminded of the kick he has always dreamed of executing. Determined to improve, Seong gets into position and tightens his abs at the right moment before launching his own kick at the bag. This time the impact is much stronger and more controlled than before, and Guk replies that seeing how he can execute it after seeing it once, but he thought he was here just for fun. However, Seong realizes that he has said this before and apologizes in front of Guk for saying something like that. Guk says that it's not like he need a sense of calling to do MMA, and finding it fun is better than seeing it as dog shit. The next day, the CEO of Elite FC, Yob, arrives and Jang excitedly asks if he thinks Seong isn't incredibly handsome. However, Yob completely ignores the comment and instead he focuses on Seong, asking if he's the kind of person who carelessly throws flying punches. Meanwhile, Hwan notices Seong's expression and reassures him not to overthink things, and he tells him to stay calm and just perform exactly as he did during sparring, reminding him that nerves won't help in the fight. On the other hand, the other guy warns the bald man that Seong only joined MMA a week ago, so he shouldn't go overboard or let his guard down. However, the bald man dismisses the warning, confidently replying that since he's a featherweight, non-professionals don't even need protective gear to spar with him. As the match begins, the bell rings and the bald opponent charges forward, but Seong swiftly dodges with perfect timing, catching Yob's attention. Observing from the side, Yob thinks that Seong's defense is surprisingly solid. However, things quickly take a turn as Seong starts getting beaten up badly. Yob is thinking that he's taking way too much damage, but Jang tells Yob that Seong hasn't loosened up yet, though deep down he wonders if something is off with Seong. But just then Seong dodges the Baldy's punch and hits him with a perfect uppercut. Hwan tells the supervisor that Seong is not backing down even if he's competing against a pro. The round ends and Seong realizes that getting punched is also fun and feels sad about not finding this sport earlier. However, Yob comments that Seong seems skilled but lacks experience and his stamina couldn't keep up since he only focused on the current match. Seong ends up getting beaten badly by the bald guy who laughs at him and mocks him, asking why he was acting so confident before when he can't even stand now. When the round ends, Yob tells Jang there's nothing to see and he says Seong is having a tough time but they'll train him later. Just then, Guk freaks out at Seong for behaving like a kid in the ring and asking why he is going easy on his opponent in the ring. But this gets Yob and Jang's attention as well. But he keeps going off on him saying MMA is a sport that grabs clown by their peanuts and pokes their eyes. Seong then removes his headgear and decides to fight real in this final round. Afterward, the bald guy suddenly feels a wave of fear when he notices Seong's unexpected change in attitude. Just moments ago, Seong was getting completely beaten down, but now his stance is steady and his expression looks oddly calm. Despite this, the bald Andrew Tate doesn't hesitate and charges him with a punch, but Seong effortlessly dodges. Not only that, but he also suddenly starts acting like a kid who hasn't gotten his candy yet, which makes Jang panic. If Seong had just stayed still and played it safe, they could have secured the contract, but now everything is completely ruined. However, the clown starts to wonder if Seong had been pretending the whole time, thinking that he was about to show him something, but now it seems like everything was just an act. Without hesitating, the clown throws a punch at Seong, but before he can even react, he gets hit so hard in return that he is stumbling backward. Afterward, he moves again to attack Seong, but Seong dodges and attacks him on his liver with an uppercut. He gets angry and charges with Seong again, but he dodges all of his attacks, making him look like a fool. Moreover, Yob realizes that Seong isn't going easy on him, but the baldy is getting completely outclassed, like his fingertips and the way he used a series of setup moves to completely throw him off his pace. Furthermore, Yob wonders if it's his usual and natural style because a newbie like him is fighting with such determination. Meanwhile, the baldy thinks that he is being overpowered and Seong's punches are matching him, but 5 with grappling he can do something. But Seong quickly follows up with a powerful uppercut and then kicks him straight in the face, completely knocking him out and ending the fight. Afterward, the crowd erupts into cheers for Seong, celebrating his unexpected victory. Meanwhile, Yob approaches him and comments that the outcome was surprising, but he also points out a serious flaw in Seong's fighting style. He explains that during the final round, Seong was less focused on the match itself and was treating it more like a street fight, which could be a dangerous habit for him in the future. He explains that they are athletes, not fighters, and that sports have rules along with other things they need to follow. In his eyes, someone who can't see the difference doesn't deserve to be an athlete. However, as he continues talking, he notices Seong frowning, which makes him pause and ask if he understands what he's trying to say. Seong then responds confidently, saying that Yob means sportsmanship is important, but as long as it's not a penalty, he can do whatever it takes to win. Moving forward, Yoon says that they can discuss that later and they should talk about the contract now. He then asks if Seong would like to sign it so they can do it now if he is interested, but Seong rejects the offer like a loser. Seong says that he doesn't think he deserves to be an elite FC athlete, which instantly makes Yob angry. Later that night, Seong goes on a dinner date with Guk, but it's clear that Yob is still angry at him. Seong apologizes for causing trouble, but instead of accepting it, Guk asks why he even decided to join their team in the first place. However, Seong simply responds that he joined because he wanted to, without giving any real reason. This casual answer instantly irritates Guk, making him even angrier, and he freaks out and Seong asking if he is just trying to get back at CEO because he was a little harsh. However, Seong explains that he is not someone who can't differentiate between right and wrong, and he did sports throughout his school years and all his coaches have called him a brainless geek. Moreover, Guk asks Seong if he sees the shadows of his past coaches in the CEO, but Seong replies that they are all the same, always forcing him to do whatever they want. He also mentions that they used to say, killing an athlete's individuality is easy, but unlike them, he finds Guk different from the rest. Seong explains that he said he should fight whichever way he wants, and whether it's grabbing their peanuts or jabbing their eyes, he should just enjoy as long as it's not a penalty. But Guk replies that he only said that in the heat of the moment because Seong was performing poorly. However, Seong can't help but think that no coach would go as far as to call someone brain-dead trash. Moreover, Guk explains that most people start MMA out of love and passion for it, just like him, and these same people quit in less than 2 years because they can't afford it. Additionally, it's a sport where one can enjoy if they can meet the ends, and that's the reason everyone is eager to join associations, because that's where they can earn big. However, Seong responds by saying that he isn't doing this for bad guys or to make money. In response, Guk tells him that out of 100 people, every single one of them started with the same mindset, yet they all ended up the same way. However, Guk thinks that if Seong insists on starting with that attitude as well, his chances of making it through are extremely slim. Seong says that he has decided not to go back to a life constrained by money, but Guk feels like he is just a kid messing around and asks if he won't regret this. Afterward, Guk accepts him and tells him to start from next week, realizing that the more he looks at Seong, the more he wants to do unholy things. Moreover, Guk believes that they are living in an era where money comes before anything else, and since no one can predict the future, he feels confident about having Seong on the team. He then informs Seong that he will have to pay for membership until his debut. Upon hearing this, Seong immediately starts annoying him by repeatedly asking pointless questions repeatedly. The next day, Hoon sits on his knees ready to give Seong a sloppy time, and Seong asks him if he likes those things, to which Hoon asks about how long he has stopped exercising. But Hoon asks Seong about his weight and whether he has been gaining any, but Seong replies that he gained 7 kilos over the past 2 years and now just focuses on maintaining it. Hoon is actually in charge of determining which weight class Seong will compete in. After analyzing his muscle mass, body fluid, and overall physique, he concludes that Seong's weight is stable and doesn't need any changes. Furthermore, Hoon says that Seong will most likely fall under the lightweight category, but Seong can't believe it because he currently weighs 80 kilos and would have to lose 10 more. He argues that cutting that much weight is too much of a stretch since it would make him lose a lot of strength and stamina. However, Hoon reassures him that for actual matches, they will go by his usual weight, so there won't be a significant loss of muscle or stamina. Moreover, it's now time to discuss Seong's training methods, so Hoon explains that normally, newcomers would go through a trial test in the office before joining the athlete department. However, Seong is different, and he skipped training entirely and joined without even learning the basics. He explains that this is the reason they have to move fast, and he needs to learn wrestling, and then he gives Seong his training schedule. Basically, on Monday and Thursday he will be doing a lot of conditioning work and will be training kickboxing on the remaining days. But Hoon asks if he has any questions because they will start the 1-month training after the test, and tells Seong in advance that the training will be hard. However, Seong doesn't care and looks confident, saying he has been training for a while now. Later, as training begins, Seong is already out of breath. Hoon asks if that was just the beginner's course and he's already struggling, warning that once the real championship training starts, he might end up pissing his pants. Nonetheless, Seong thinks that there are times heavier weights are listed to help because they are gradually reduced, but Hoon is doing this with increases weights. Afterward, the muscle and strength assistant coach, Taeyoung, arrives because he is in charge of second half of training. He grabs Seong by his neck as if he is about to choke him, but Seong says that it's not a good idea to switch coaches in middle of session and he wants to do with Hoon. However, Hoon didn't care and left him with the beast Taeyoung, realizing that he still has a long way to go, and he finds Seong's ambition and ability a rare case and thinks that he might be the next star of MMA. Afterward, Seong has his sparring session with Taejun, and once it ends, Hwen asks Seong that their training started around the same time, so why is it so difficult for them to talk? He further says that he was surprised when he found out he was joining them, and then they start arguing like little kids. Just then, Guk also arrives at the gym to make an announcement. He shows a paper and asks if anyone knows what this, but without waiting for an answer. He explains that he has 4 of these with him and he stole it for quick change of pace and had a group tour. Seong then asks Hwen what an offer is, to which Hwen explains that it's a championship proposal, and he further clarifies that having 4 offers means they have secured spots in 4 different matches. Curiously, Seong asks if other teams also receive these offers, but Hwen replies that organizations don't just hand them out upon request, someone has to put in the effort to earn them. Nonetheless, Guk decides to start announcing the names, beginning with Yoon-kung, a wrestling coach. The second is Taejun, and the third is a troublemaker named Jin, and she happens to be the same age as Seong and is affiliated with X1. Additionally, she is a super rookie who has won 5 rounds in the strawweight division and is considered an MMA goddess among fans. Suddenly, Guk announces that the last person to get the offer is none other than Seong. Hearing that, everyone starts looking at him, but Guk says that this was pushed as a team. Later, Seong tells Guk that not everyone seems to agree with the decision, but Guk replies that it was the organization that made the call. He reassures Seong that he doesn't need to worry about it since the organization knows best and is the one responsible for making these decisions. Seong then asks where he gets the offer from, but Guk replies that it was X1 who sent the offer. It turns out X1 is the best organization in Korea, and they saw his viral clip in the MMA community. However, Guk shows him the match schedule, and it turns out his match is with a welterweight guy and it's a backup match. Guk explains that the initial player was exempted due to injury, so they are filling in his place, and in 3 weeks he will have to lose weight. However, Seong wonders that having a training period 3 months before is common, but fighting a top-class opponent without having a good physique is a suicide bomb. Seong decides to accept the channel. So Guk tells him to sign the contract tomorrow, but Seong asks if he is going to object. Guk replies that if he truly wanted to oppose the decision, he would have rejected it himself. He then asks Seong if his parents know that he is competing as an MMA athlete. In the end, Seong admits that he hasn't told them anything yet, and hearing this, Guk gives him until tomorrow to inform them. Afterward, Seong gets back home early, but his mom tells him to shower because he smells even worse than a rotten fish. Later, he sits with his parents and tells them about everything, but his mom says he has been doing this all along and now he is asking for permission. She straight up rejects him and shouts at him, using the mom card to play with his feelings that she slept less and skipped meals so he can do sports. However, she panics and quickly leaves the room, but Seong grabs her hand, telling her that he knows how much she has sacrificed for him. He confesses that he has always felt guilty about it, which is why he wanted her approval in the first place. However, despite his sincerity, she pulls her hand away and leaves the room without saying a word. Watching this unfold, his dad reassures Seong not to be too upset, explaining that she is only acting this way because she's worried about him. However, his dad reassures him that he can do whatever he wants and advises him to go comfort his mother. After all, if she truly wanted to oppose him, she wouldn't have made so many sacrifices for him in the first place. Afterward, he asks for his dad's credit card so he can pay for the membership fees. His dad asks if he would pay him some later. Seong tells him that he might repay him double or even triple when he gets famous, but his dad starts joking about his small junior. Nonetheless, his dad shakes his hand and asks him about the membership cost. While they both are having fun, his mom peeks through the door. Meanwhile, a new deadly fighter who looks like a chicken head asks someone if they have heard back from them yet. He says that there are only 3 weeks left until the match, asking that 60 people were listed in his rank but they can't get replacement in over 2 weeks. Additionally, he is a member of Team S. Sowell and his name is Joam, but his manager reminds him not to stress too much, warning that it could cause muscle knots. Suddenly, the manager receives a call and finds out that they have a replacement for Joam. However, the strange thing is that neither of them has ever heard of this guy before, and despite that, Joam assumes that he must be a newcomer who recently joined a league. Afterward, Hoon explains that the profit share of the prize money is set at a 9-to-1 ratio, meaning Seong will take 9 parts while the gym takes only 1. However, Seong finds this unusual since the standard is usually a 7-to-3 split. He wonders if the gym will even make any profit at this rate, but Hoon responds that this is the policy set by the director. He then adds that if Seong is so concerned about the gym's earnings, they can always change it back to 7-to-3 just for him. Hoon then gives him the contract, saying the fight money is set at 2 million won and the winners will get a 50% bonus as well. He further explains that if he weighs over 100%, then all of his fight money will be confiscated, and this will be the player's fault for being disqualified from going over the limit. However, Seong asks how much he will actually receive if he wins the match. Hoon explains that first, 3.3% will be deducted as an organization tax from the 3 million won prize, and then another 10% will go to the organization. In the end, Seong will take home 3.3 million won, and this leaves him speechless as he is unable to close his mouth. He thinks about how he couldn't even earn 5 million won from working at a convenience store. Yet now he's getting all that from just one match. Moreover, Hoon warns him that if he doesn't perform well this time, the opportunity may never come again. He emphasizes that the organization isn't a charity because they don't throw money around for nothing. Everything is based on performance and success, and Hoon further explains that if Seong lacks the necessary skills, then he must at least prove his determination. If he fails to prepare properly, his fans will be the first to disappear. Afterward, Seong and Joam step into the ring, recalling that earlier, Hoon had explained that this session was an essential part of developing striking skills. Joam's style is straightforward yet highly effective. He seamlessly transitions from attacking to grappling, demonstrating his expertise and adaptability. With his large build and extensive experience, he is a strong and experienced opponent. Hoon warns that Joam will be relying on grappling techniques, and if Seong fails to handle him properly, the impact on his performance and confidence could be significant. However, Seong told him that he has never done wrestling before, but Hoon replies that he said he was a Korean wrestling athlete, but turns out Seong has only done S-Iron, which is a traditional wrestling style. Back in the present, Seong swiftly kicks Joam's leg and forces him against the cage. However, it quickly becomes apparent that Joam isn't just some random opponent, he's a veteran wrestling legend. Without hesitation, Joam counters by wrapping his powerful arms tightly around Seong, locking him in a firm grip. Seong immediately feels the pressure, realizing that breaking free won't be easy against someone of Joam's caliber. Afterward, they both charge at each other, and Hoon realizes that Seong was mistaken when he thought he wouldn't be able to adapt to MMA, even though he had experience in S-Iron in the past. The next day, while they are on their way, Hoon questions Seong about his current weight, which happens to be 77.3 kilograms. In response, Hoon reassures him that X1 permits an error margin of up to 500 grams, so he is still within the acceptable range. Seong then asks the goddess about why she is tagging along as if she is that free. She replies that she is here because others are too busy. Seong begins to irritate her by questioning whether someone like her would be of any use and telling her to just leave. However, Hoon then questions Seong about how his friends reacted when he informed them that he was going to fight, and it is soon revealed that this loser is also completely alone and has no friends. Afterward, they finally arrive at their destination, and as Seong steps into the room, he finds himself unable to stop glancing around. However, after taking their seats, Seong notices Jaeim sitting nearby. Hoon quickly warns him not to stare at Jaeim and instructs him to avoid approaching him except during the face-off. Seong realizes that Jaeim is intentionally not looking at him. Afterward, the weigh-in begins and it's turn for Seong to go and stand in his position, but instead he starts taking his pants off, but Jing starts blushing after seeing his peanut popping out of his underwear. Seong successfully passes the weigh-in and, feeling the heat in the room, decides not to wear his pants. Afterward, he and Jeom stand face to face and Seong observes that Jeom looks like a ghost with dry-looking skin. Meanwhile, Jeom quietly whispers, questioning whether Seong had ever participated in the amateur league. Jeom begins taunting Seong with trash talk, trying to provoke him. However, Seong finally snaps and yells at him to shut up, reminding him that he was the one who asked them to back out when there were only 3 weeks left until the match. He furiously adds that this is exactly why he is here, to clean up the mess Jeom left behind. Nonetheless, Jeom gets close to Seong asking if he wants to die, but Seong pushes him back with his hand on the neck. Seong then adds that there is a 1-year age difference between them, so Jeom shouldn't speak to him so casually. Later that night, Seong gets home and asks where his dad is. So his mother replies that his director asked him to go fishing together. Just then, Seong hugs his mom in a freaky way from behind, saying he is going to fight tomorrow. He tells her that he will fight better if she cheers him on, but she stays quiet, so he decides to leave. She then asks him if there is anything he wants to eat since he needs to have a good meal to gain strength for the fight tomorrow. In response, he says that he wants to eat spaghetti with lots of meat, but she tells him to go wash up first because he smells like a dog. The next day, Seong practices his moves when Guk says his shoulders are soft and asks how easy his training has been for his muscles to be this relaxed. Guk says that he will give him 2 assignments for the upcoming match, and the first is to get 10 hits on Jeom's face. He explains that he shouldn't act recklessly and should plan a little like relaxing himself and lure him into throwing a punch, and then he should do that. Furthermore, the second task is to stay alert and keep his ears open. It is explained that if the fight doesn't go in his favor, he should concentrate on Sung-hoon's voice. However, Seong questions what he should do if his instincts tell him to act differently. In response, Guk advises him to have faith in himself. Just then, an announcement is made calling for Jeom and Seong to step into the ring for their match. Following that, Seong enters the fight room and gets tense, so Guk tells him to do a little warm-up before the fight. Meanwhile, Hoon questions Guk about what he told Seong, saying that he should have instructed him to listen to him instead since he is in charge of this fight. However, Guk responds by telling him to let Seong handle things on his own. He explains that if Seong follows his instructions and still loses, the shock might be too much for him, making it difficult for him to fight again. Guk explains that Seong doesn't know how long A will be in industry, so they should let him fight like he wants to, and because he doesn't have any proofs, he wants to see how long will Seong fight. After that, the announcer introduces both fighters along with a brief backstory about each of them. On the left side of the stage stands Seong the Lonely Clown, who is considered a rising star. On the right side is Jeom, who is hailed as Korea's next welterweight future. Seong notices that Jeom seems completely different from how he appeared the day before, so he decides to be cautious and avoid getting caught by his grappling. However, Jeom is still angry and warns him that this will be his last professional fight. Despite this, Seong thinks that Jeom is nothing more than a loser with a narrow mind. Just then, the fight begins, and Hoon tells Seong to keep looking at his light steps because he doesn't have the jitters. Nonetheless, Hoon turns around and instructs Soo-hyuk to prepare the ice and Vaseline in advance. However, when he looks back, he is left in complete shock at what he sees. It appears that Seong has utterly demolished Jeom, and now he stands there like a hero who has just defeated the final boss. Afterward, Jeom rushes at Seong but ends up taking a straight punch to his face. In just 10 seconds, Seong successfully scores a knockdown against him, but as he moves in to land another punch, Jeom's coach yells for him to pull himself together, and then he dodges just in time. Jeom then tries to calm himself, and because of it he loses his initiative. Seong rushes at him again and punches his face, but Jeom then hardens his guard, making Seong think that he is asking for more. However, Seong attacks him like a werewolf and completely destroys Jeom with a punch on the liver. Seong then charges at Jeom again, attempting to grapple with him, but somehow, Jeom manages to hold his ground. Everyone in the arena is left in awe, questioning how a fighter who has barely been training in MMA for 40 days is handling a high-ranking veteran so effortlessly. Meanwhile, Hoon initially assumes that Seong might be at a disadvantage, but that turns out to be far from the truth. Seong is completely dominating the fight, despite facing an opponent who is not only bigger but also far more experienced than him. Furthermore, Hoon observes that Seong's movements are unconventional, filled with feints and offbeat timing. He realizes that this unpredictability is what will ultimately bring Jeom down. Just like how Seong had previously ruined that Baldy's rhythm. By constantly switching between normal beats and offbeats, Seong creates a fighting style that is nearly impossible for someone encountering it for the first time to handle. Afterward, Seong lands a perfectly executed jumping knee strike, dealing such intense damage that Jeom collapses onto his knees. Without wasting a second, Seong follows up with a powerful uppercut, delivering the final blow. With that, he secures victory in what becomes the most intense and unforgettable debut match ever. Later that night, Guk and Hoon drive Seong home, and during the ride, Hoon admits that he never expected Seong to achieve a flawless like-having no-hit victory in just one round. However, Guk responds by saying that while he knew Seong would do well, the performance still exceeded his expectation. Earlier, Seong had asked Hoon if he had missed anything, mentioning that he hadn't heard anything during the fight. In response, Hoon simply praises him, giving him great points for fighting so exceptionally well. Back in the present, Hoon comes to the realization that the coach had understood what Seong was like and intentionally gave him the confidence to go all out, though that wasn't the only factor contributing to the victory. Hoon then jokingly tells Guk that he respects him even more than he respects his chicks, which immediately annoys Guk. In response, Guk starts mocking Hoon's driving skills, teasing him by saying that he drives even worse than a woman. Afterward, Guk asks him about using the company credit of 600,000 won without even informing him, and on the other hand he is eating trash ramen with kimchi. The next day, Seong goes to the cafe to meet his friends in a mysterious look as if someone is going to recognize him. However, they starts making fun of him, asking why was he wearing stinky underwear and fighting in an iron cage, but Seong replies that he is just an uneducated goon who doesn't know what fight shorts are. The guy with glasses asks why he didn't tell them that he is going to do MMA, but Seong replies that he didn't have the time to think about other stuff. But Seong wonders that he has already experienced a few reactions just now and no one paid attention to him despite having exercised for 10 years, but to receive attention for a 2-minute fight is amazing. He then asks the glasses nerd about his life, so he replies that he has been focused on doing part-time jobs and he need to go back to school next year. Hearing that, Seong starts making fun of him and tells him to find a job because he is a grown man now. However, the other geek is busy preparing for the civil servant exams, which Seong thinks is even worse than being homeless. Afterward, Seong receives a call from his dad, who informs him that he will be attending a company gathering and will be coming home late, and tells Seong to head home alone since his mother is by herself. After hearing that, Seong gets emotional and wonders that she waited all night for him and he should have stayed home with her today. Seong tells his friends that he needs to go back earlier and be with his parents because he has something important to talk about with his mom. After he leaves, the ugly nerd starts backbiting about how he didn't have to walk on eggshells around them and he is just faking everything. Afterward, as he walks home, he gets a call from Sang-hoon telling him that he sent him the fight money, and it turns out it was 11 million won. But from what Seong has heard, his fight was selected as the fight of the night, earning him a bonus of 10 million won, an amount far greater than the 1 million won per month he was initially offered. Not long ago, Seong was completely broke, struggling to make any money despite dedicating years to sports. But his unexpected debut in MMA turned things around, allowing him to earn a massive 10 million won in a single fight. Following that, he sees his mom standing by the road and thinks that his father was one of the numerous suitors that chased after his mom when she was young, and basically, she was a real goddess of her era. He then runs and hugs her in a freaky way once again, which scared her. Seong asks her why she is buying groceries here when there is a mart closer to their house. She responds by saying that it's cheaper here and that she treats it as a form of exercise. However, Seong can't help but wonder why she chose to shop at this place just to save only 2,000 to 3,000 won when she could have easily bought the same items from the mart near their house. Nonetheless, his mother asks him if he had a dinner appointment with his friends, so why did he come back already, but he makes a fake excuse that they had some work and had to leave. Furthermore, Seong suggests that they should have dinner outside since it has been a long time since they last went anywhere together. However, she responds by saying that she has already bought all the groceries. In response, Seong tells her that they can just leave the groceries at home and insists on treating her to dinner, excitedly mentioning that he earned some money today. Meanwhile, at the X1 headquarters, the CEO watches Seong's fight and is amazed by his skills, impressed by how well he fights. Curious, he asks his assistant if Seong is a newcomer, and then wonders if a hidden treasure had emerged in Korea while he was away on a trip to Japan. The assistant replies that he belongs to the Team Attack group and he is being trained under Coach Guk. Nonetheless, the CEO wonders that Seong gave up on money and joined their team because he wanted to learn from Coach Guk and Hoon. However, the assistant adds that Seong is 22 years old, has already completed his military service, and is currently receiving 20 million won along with 50% of his winnings. Even so, the CEO remains determined and instructs his assistant to recruit Seong no matter what, even if he has other offers in mind. He further tells him to let Seong know that they will allow him to choose his own matches and to make sure they present him with an even better deal. The next day, Seong approaches Jin, but as usual, she ignores him, but he asks if she usually takes this path, but she continues to brush him off and tells him to just go ahead. Instead of listening, Seong snatches her book, only to discover that it's a philosophy book. He asks her why she is reading something so boring, but she responds rudely once again, telling him to mind his own business. Later, in the office, Seong and Jin sit across from each other when Hoon enters the room. He informs Seong that he needs to meet him at the director's office because there is something important to discuss. Hoon then hands him over the X1 contract and tells him that Chief Song contacted them and wanted to sing an official contract with him, and tells him that their management loved how he won by no hit in his debut match. However, Hoon adds that it's a bit concerning because Seong performed well, but at the same time, Jeom couldn't fight in his usual style. Seong realizes that Jeom had underestimated him and was agitated, but if Jeom had used wrestling against him, Seong might have been the one to lose. Moreover, Hoon asks him if he has any plan to sign the contract, to which he replies that he will sign the contract because he will never get such an opportunity again. So, Hoon decides to explain to him the contract, saying the period will be for 3 years and 3 matches, which means if he isn't able to fulfill the number of matches, the contract will end after 3 years. However, Seong asks him about the reverse situation, wondering if he can't fight in the remaining 2 years if he fought 3 matches in the first year. Hoon explains that fighter exchanges usually have an agent and agency fee involved, and this skips the step and allows organizations to negotiate directly with each other to arrange for matches. But Seong thinks that he will have pay a lot. But Hoon replies that even if his results aren't good, they can't really fire him. Furthermore, the next crucial detail is the special clause, which states that if Seong joins SFC, his current contract will be automatically annulled. Additionally, since SFC is a competitor, fighter exchanges are not permitted, meaning that any existing fighters under contract will have their agreements cancelled. SFC proudly proclaims itself as the greatest MMA stage, believing that as fighter standards rise, the reputation of smaller organizations will also grow. Nonetheless, Hoon explains the fighter insurance, saying when he gets injured the fighters will pay if it's 500,000 win and below, and in the event that it exceeds that amount, the insurance will kick in. Moreover, Hoon explains that if Seong wins his next match, his basic pay will increase by 700,000 won, and if he manages to win all of his fights, he will receive a total increment of 3.75 million won. Additionally, X1 undercard rookie debut fighters typically earn 1 million won, but if they make it to the main card, their earnings range from 1.5 million to 2 million won. Fighters usually begin as amateurs, where they must secure 8 consecutive victories to progress further. After finishing his explanation, Hoon warns Seong that future matches won't be as easy as his first one. Now that everyone has seen his fighting style, he must be prepared to adapt, fight in different styles, and endure more challenges. Afterward, Seong signs the contract and Hoon presents him with a special surprise, announcing that his second match has already been scheduled for December 31st against a maniac. Meanwhile, a man dressed in a black suit is taking on a group of goons, fighting with the intensity of John Wick after losing his dog. He effortlessly dismantles them, throwing punches one after another as if he were smashing a chocolate cake. With each powerful kick, he sends them flying like a warlord on a battlefield. After taking down most of the goons, he finally faces off against the last one standing, who looks like a K-pop idol. With a single kick, he defeats him, and suddenly, the lights go out, revealing that it was all part of a movie scene being filmed. The director praises Sang-hun's impressive moves during the shoot. Meanwhile, another man approaches the K-pop idol and tells him that he completely overdid the scene. However, Hasuk replies by saying that they needed to finish the scene in one take, so he didn't have to exert himself too much. He adds that he didn't want to cause any inconvenience, especially since the person he's speaking to be the one who helped him land this role, and it turns out he's just an extra actor. Moreover, the person tells Hasuk to work hard and he won't forget to take care of him as if he is his side chick. Hasek then tells him that he got an offer and he thinks things are finally looking good, and they even said it's going to be the main card fight. Later, Hoon and Seong watch Hasek's fight clips and Seong thinks that it's just standard fight without much grappling. However, Hoon replies that he has a record of fighting 4 matches in the amateur league and 2 matches in pro league. Additionally, his fighting base is karate, and he holds a 3rd Dan rank, even winning a prize in an international competition. Moreover, Hoon explains that fighters like him are difficult to handle because they are highly aggressive, constantly attacking due to their exceptional stamina and endurance. Furthermore, he explains that stamina is like a human's battery. Once it's completely drained, a person can't move. This is the same reason why many professional fighters, even those who have trained for decades, sometimes appear motionless in a fight as they are simply out of energy. Nonetheless, Hoon suggests 3 possible attack strategies for the match. The first is grappling, as the opponent isn't skilled at grabbing or clinching, but the second approach is to outlast him by having greater stamina and endurance. However, the third strategy is the most unusual. Seong must charge at him like a complete maniac and break through his guard with relentless aggression. But Seong says that if he was that strong, then he wouldn't need to come up with strategies since he can just keep attacking them to win. But Hoon replies that there is one thing that will help, and it's Muay Thai. Additionally, Hoon explains that Muay Thai is considered the strongest martial art in the world, unmatched in elbow and knee techniques. He then asks Seong if he's ready to start training. However, Seong hesitates and points out that none of their coaches specialize in Muay Thai. Afterward, Hoon introduces him to H1, who seems like knows more about elbow and knee techniques of Muay Thai techniques than anyone else in the gym. H1 informs him that he can't use his elbows or knee strikes freely in MMA. The most he can rely on are punches and kicks. That's why he needs to learn the plum, a specific type of Muay Thai clinch. He explains that mastering it is crucial for anyone who wants to effectively use knee strikes and elbows in a fight. He further explains that many fighters have lost matches simply because they didn't know how to counter the plum clinch. One of the most famous examples was in the SFC middleweight division, where Khabib kicked Conor's cheek, proving just how crucial it is to understand and defend against this technique. Afterward, H1 decides to teach him how to grab others, and then they both hold each other's neck as if they are about to give a French candy. H1 explains that for right-handed fighters, the technique starts by using their left hand to firmly grab the back of their opponent's neck. Then, they should use their right hand to pull down on the opponent's left hand while maintaining a right angle. After that, they need to bring their elbow closer to the opponent's face to gain control. Finally, in just a second, they must push their opponent down forcefully using both hands behind their neck, securing a dominant position. Afterward, Seong asks if he could just step back, but H1 replies that he doesn't have any space to move like this, and he will pull his head in and give him a strong kick on his chocolate bars. H1 explains that in the first half, he will be able to shake him off because he can still react fast and have a lot of strength. Seong then grabs H1's neck, but H1 immediately instructs him to straighten his neck and back before his opponent fully locks him into the plum position. He then teaches Seong that to escape, he must twist his body and shoulders to swing out of the lock. However, H1 warns that if the opponent has already secured the grip and is using their full muscle strength, escaping with just neck strength alone will be impossible. After learning the moves, Seong starts appreciating H1 more because he always thought he was a useless brain-dead fighter. Just then, another femboy-type coach arrives to teach Seong about strengthening his back and lat muscle. Curious, Seong turns to H1 and asks if he knows what kind of weird person this guy. However, it turns out the coach heard everything. He immediately questions Seong about what kind of person he thinks he is. Seong, realizing the situation, quickly replies by saying that he is a good-looking guy with amazing skills. Afterward, Seong grabs Taeyong on his back and asks H1 to join them for a circuit as well, but he makes useless excuses. Afterward, Seong practices Muay Thai with Youngwon, and it turns out Seong performs exceptionally well against him, so he tells him to stop. Youngwon tells him that it looks like he understands the concept and he have been improving tremendously. Afterward, Seong realizes that Youngwon is the only professional Muay Thai fighter in the gym, and without his guidance, he wouldn't have been able to grasp the sense of movement needed for the techniques. More importantly, he acknowledges that his muscle strength and stamina have improved significantly, making a huge difference in his training. Moreover, he heard that muscle strength and stamina are inverse proportions, and he starts crying like a crybaby after seeing the results of enduring training from that gorilla earlier. Just then, Jin sits beside him and Seong realizes that she just started weight reduction 1 month ago and she is just cutting on sodium and junk food, but the only snacks she is allowed to eat are a few pieces of nut. Additionally, she even reduced her food intake and still must train, so she doesn't have a lot of energy and keeps needing to visit toilet. Seong then tells her to keep fighting because there are just 10 days left, but she ignores him and tells him to mind his own business. He treats her as a friend now and he feels bad for seeing her as a lethargic. It's finally match day, and their team has 5 matches lined up, and they end up taking the offers from the organization in Youngwon's Central League main match. Jin faces a tough fight but manages to win in the 3rd round by submission, making her the next rising star of the strawweight division. However, Youngwon loses again. He was so close to winning but left his mouth open and got hit. Meanwhile, at the X1 official weigh-in day, Seong feels sick and exhausted due to the intense weight reduction process. However, despite his discomfort, he finds this new venue much better than the previous one, mainly because here he can take off his pants freely without any issues. Afterward, Seong passes the weigh-in, and everyone starts calling Hosok since it's his turn next. Just then, he comes out of the washroom looking even worse than a homeless person. Even so, Seong almost didn't recognize him because of his looks, but still he passes the test. Afterward, Seong asks for the water bottle, but it turns out that a clueless guy on their team forgot it in the car. Out of nowhere, Hosok suddenly hands the bottle to Seong, saying that he is sorry for causing the commotion just now and he had a hard time with the weight reduction. He says that he plays a small role in a movie as a bulky character, and since it's a small role, he needs to put in that much effort. After he leaves, saying he doesn't have to be that nice to an opponent he is fighting tomorrow. However, Seong thinks he is polite compared to Jom, who is a trash can, but Hoon tells him not to go easy on him because he will be charging him like a mad bull tomorrow. The next day, Seong is having his meal when Jin also joins him, saying Youngwon is having his match soon, so she is here to help. However, Seong tells her that if they called her in for support, then Youngwon is really serious this time. She then hands him over some chocolates and says that it's a red ginseng snack and chocolate, and it's even good for stamina and blood circulation if they eat them 1 hour before their match. Even so, he starts making fun of her by giving these candies for free, thinking she might have done something terrible. However, she gets furious and says that these are just some leftovers she had. Just then, she gets a call from Youngwon, who is asking for help, and before leaving, she warns him that if he says anything else then she will crush his choco bars. Seong thanks her for these candies, which soften her heart even more, and she just tells him to go and win the match. Later, Taeyoung asks Seong about what he is eating before his match, but he replies that it's red ginseng and chocolate, which Jin gave him these and told him to eat an hour before the match. Afterward, the match begins and the announcer starts talking about how Seong hasn't taken any damage at all, saying there's no way he would pass up a chance to join an end-of-year event. Hoon then talks to Seong about his area, which is on the outskirts, and reminds him not to get greedy or forget the timing to hit and move back. After that, Hosok steps into the cage, and it turns out he looks huge, almost the same size as Seong but with thicker muscles, and that's why he was able to fight so recklessly. The match begins and Seong rushes to Hosok's side, but he charges at him with several punches to keep his opponent stay back. Just then, Seong kicks him, but it turns out to be a failure because he blocks it. Hosok then punches and moves forward, but Seong dodges and jumps to the side, and he realizes there is no change in his expression. Afterward, Hosok throws a series of punches at Seong, and Hoon realizes he is even fiercer than expected. Seong blocks the attacks he isn't able to dodge, and just as Hosok goes for an uppercut, Seong moves out of the way and counters with a powerful kick that pushes him back. However, right after that, Seong does something completely unexpected. He drops his guard, standing there with full confidence as if he were the next John Jones of the UFC. Afterward, Hosok wonders if he is acting tough on purpose, but he decides to maintain his pace and drain his stamina and move towards Seong. But he hits him with a jab. Hosok wonders if there weren't any movements to indicate that, and he is so fast. Seong then throws another jab before attempting a fake low kick, but instead of following through, he quickly switches to a fake roundhouse. The announcer points out that Hosok has been completely tricked by Seong and is now backed into a corner. Hosok gets angry, giving Seong the perfect opening to go for a jumping back kick. However, Hosok manages to block it with his arms, but before he can recover, Seong immediately follows up with a high kick that lands straight on Hosok's face. However, Hosok runs to the side, but Seong is also chasing him by walking like a crab. On the other hand, Hoon realizes that doing feints and attacks with weird timing so that the opponent finds it hard to react is something amazing. Meanwhile, Hosok wonders if he got the momentum now and it won't be easy for him to get out, so he needs to hang in there for now. He then sees the perfect moment to strike and throws a punch, but Seong dodges and counters with a powerful blow to Hosok's body. Without giving him a chance to recover, Seong lands another heavy shot to his torso, making it even harder for him to fight back. After that, Seong confidently walks toward Hosok and stands right in front of him, completely unguarded. Even though he is well within striking range, Hosok is so overwhelmed that he can't even lift his hand to throw a punch. Seong wonders that he must be feeling frustrated since he had been counting on his stamina and toughness, but now it's time for him to beat him up like how daddy beat their little girls. Seong starts landing blows all over Hosok's body, and he totally helps that he is not even able to counterattack, but despite the relentless attacks, Hoseok refuses to go down and keeps holding on, desperate to turn the fight around. He suddenly grabs Seong by the waist, but Seong quickly counters by locking his neck in a Muay Thai clinch. Without wasting a second, Seong then drives his knee straight into Hoseok's liver, delivering a devastating blow. As Seong continues to land knee strikes, Hoseok urgently raises his guard, trying to protect himself while his coach yells for him to escape the attack range. Desperate to break free, Hoseok throws a punch at Seong's face and attempts to move away, but before he can get out, Seong delivers another brutal knee strike, this time even stronger than before, driving it straight into Hoseok with full force. But Seong doesn't stop there, relentlessly delivering knee strike after knee strike, making it impossible for Hoseok to escape. With each blow, the situation becomes more dangerous, as Hoseok's endurance is reaching its limit and it's only a matter of time before he can't hold on any longer. After that, Seong delivers one last kick on Hoseok which completely destroys his guard, and he gets on his knees. Just then, Seong jumps at him and goes in for the pounding. He delivers non-stop punches. However, Hoseok grabs Seong by the leg, trying to turn the fight around, but Seong reacts instantly, gripping Hoseok's head tightly and locking in a front naked choke. The hold is so strong that Hoseok struggles for a moment before completely passing out. With that, Seong wins the match by submission in just 4 minutes, marking the second time he has secured victory in the first round. Meanwhile, Hoon and Soo-hyuk think that he is an amazing person. It hasn't been that long since he learned chokes. Moreover, Soo-hyuk wonders that Hoon acts like it's nothing, but his body is itching to fight, and even someone as laid back as him got excited and clenched his cheeks a few times. However, Hoon thinks that the forgotten excitement and passion that he felt when he learned MMA for the first time, he felt it again today. Later, Seong gets a call from his mom, who congratulates him on his victory. However, noticing that her voice sounds different, he immediately asks if she has been drinking. She admits that she had little to celebrate his match and adds that his dad has gone out to buy more. Then, out of nowhere, she apologizes for supporting him and doing what he wanted, and like any mom would, she starts blaming herself for not listening to him earlier, saying that she only sent him there for money. Just then, his dad grabs the phone and tells him that his mom is drunk again and tells him that he was amazing today. Afterward, Seong realizes that he still has a long way to go and needs to work even harder so that his mom won't have to worry anymore. With his current teammates by his side, he feels like they could even conquer the moon. Just then, his teammates called him over and tell him that Taeyong said he thought his eyes were falling off like a gorilla, and at this point, it's clear that they're all completely drunk. On the 20th of January, Taeyong and Youngwon start fighting over something, and after everything sorts out, Seong hands him over the drink and Youngwon apologizes to Seong for helping him a lot, and still the results seem to be bad. What happened earlier was, Youngwon didn't lose, but he didn't win either because he took it slow in the first round but started with a right hook in round 2 and gained momentum with the crowds cheering. However, Taeyong shouted at him to take it slow and pressure his opponent, but he got too excited and ignored his instructions and punched at his opponent's guard like crazy. Furthermore, as he began losing his stamina, he opened his jaw and both of them attacked each other's chins, and it was a draw. Back and present, Youngwon asks him if he is going to scold him, but Seong doesn't want to say anything because Taeyong already said a lot. Seong thinks that he is capable of a lot, but he gets stage fright and his body freezes up whenever it's a match. Even so, Youngwon is about to tell him something, but Samon calls them over. Afterward, Hoon announces that Yoonchong has signed a contract with SFC, and it's quite a big deal for all of them. Seong finds something strange, and he tells Jin that yesterday Youngwon lost his chance at his debut and today Yoonchong got an offer from SFC. Moreover, Youngwon announced that there is a match in the middle of June and the manager and him need one more person. Hearing that, everyone starts going crazy, and Taeyong pushes Soo-hyuk aside and says he haven't been late or absent for the last 6 years, so he should be the one. However, Hoon suddenly asks everyone why they aren't joining in since everyone else is participating. Hearing that, they all get excited, thinking they can be a part of it too. But just as their excitement builds up, Hoon adds that those who have already made their pro debut and those currently preparing for a match are excluded, leaving some of them disappointed, seeing all the chaos and drama. Hoon decides that they will play Ghost Leg to fairly choose who the person will be. He explains that each person will come up one at a time and pick a number. After setting up the table, it's finally Seong's turn to choose, and as luck would have it, he picks correctly and ends up being selected. Hoon then asks Seong if he has any qualifications, like a trainer certificate or a sports certificate, but it turns out this loser has none. Despite that, Hoon tells him that if he wants to be a second at SFC, he needs to apply for a license, but since he doesn't have one, he can't go. And hearing this, everyone bursts into laughter, enjoying the moment, and now it's time for another round of Ghost Leg. But before they can start it with another Ghost Leg, Seong says that he will get the qualification before the match. Afterward, Seong shows him the news about the exam, saying 'tis in early May and he can know the results by mid-May. Just then, Tian gets in the way and says how they are supposed to wait when they don't know if he would make it or not. However, Tian says that if he gets the qualification then he will go to SFC, but if he can't then he will treat the team to a mean and the limit will be set at 300,000 won. Even so, Seong thinks that there is something fishy here, and even Hoon thinks that something is messy, but he wonders that even if something's off, he will just be cool about it and pay the 300,000 won if needed. The next day, Guk asks Hoon if he's surprised that his boss showed up to work and even brought snacks for everyone. But Hoon simply replies that it's because the boss has been working outside the gym recently. As Guk looks around, he's fascinated by how clean the gym is and realizes that they've been managing the facilities really well. Then, he notices Seong sitting in the restroom, so Hoon explains that Seong came in to study for the test since he can't focus on home. He asks him about the test, but Hoon replies that he managed to get a spot as Yoonchong's second in his June match. But he doesn't have any qualification, and that's the reason he is studying for the test. Moreover, Guk mentions that he received an offer to compete in a ranking competition in May, but the tricky part is that it's a lightweight match. He explains that while his body is more suited for lightweight, there has always been a size difference between him and his opponents so far. However, now that he'll be facing higher-ranked fighters, he realizes that he should compete in his own weight class. Moreover, he doesn't have much experience in weight reduction, and if he is also stressed because of studies, then it's going to be hard. Afterward, Guk tells everything to Seong, and he doesn't really care about it much, but replies that if he goes down to lightweight then the weight reduction will be hard. Nonetheless, Guk says that with his current weight he needs to lose about 10 kilograms, and that's not an easy thing to do, and just the weight reduction alone will be hell for him. But Seong asks him if he could try it first and see how it goes, but Guk immediately says that it's not something he can do out of fun. However, Seong starts pestering Guk to let him do it, refusing to give up until Guk finally agrees, but only under one condition. He tells Seong that he must train properly, get enough sleep, study, and stick to a strict diet, making sure to follow all of it without any excuses. But more importantly, Guk says that this time, he will personally prepare Seong for the match because the opponent he'll be facing is completely different from anyone he has fought before. Furthermore, he says that this time round is different because whether he wins or loses and how he fight will affect his value as a fighter. Guk tells Seong that preparing for this match is the top priority and warns him that if he slacks off and loses, everything he has worked for so far will be meaningless. However, Seong shouts like a maniac, declaring that he will dedicate his life to this. Then, as he checks his opponent's profile and realizes that this time, he will be facing a Japanese fighter. On the other hand, Mizushima, being the clueless guy he is, asks his boss about the 80 yen change that a customer left behind. He starts overthinking, wondering if the customer is broke or if he's just like a subway train, and comes back making a big fuss over it. However, his boss just laughs and teases him for being so weak-minded before telling him to stop worrying about it and tells him to go home since his shift is over. Afterward, he heads to the gym, where everyone sees him as a low-life loner. Without paying attention to their opinions, he takes off his jacket and starts practicing his punches on the heavy bag. The moment his fists start landing, everyone around him is left in shock and wonders just how insanely powerful he is. Just then, his coach arrives and asks him why he didn't drop by the office once he arrived. But Mizushima apologizes, and without any further talks, the coach shows him the offer they got from X1 by the end of May. On the other hand, Seong struggles to understand anything and finds studying unbearably boring. Just then, Jin walks in and asks why he's hiding here instead of using the restroom. However, it seems like Seong has been staring at her factories for a bit too long. Trying to change the subject, he quickly asks her to teach him something he just can't seem to understand. Moreover, she gets closer to him and asks about the problem, so he explains that question, but she says he has to memorize this only. But instead of memorizing it, he is just staring at her face and finds her pretty, and then he stares at her lips, wanting to do something unholy with them. After she explains everything to him, she decides to leave. Seong finds her attitude strange since she's usually rude to him. He asks if she wants to leave together, but before even waiting for her response, he quickly runs away, saying he has something to do for Hoon. She asks him if he will take a long time, but Seong replies that it might take him longer. However, she decides to leave first because she doesn't want to wait for a potato head. Seong then receives a video from Hoon and turns out he is a maniac in MMA. The next day, Guk asks him if he has seen the video he sent him about Mizushima. He explains that Mizushima is an exceptional boxer and his punches are truly powerful. With just one punch, he makes his opponents unable to respond and they just lose like that. But the main problem is his anger issues. Even after the match ends, he still attacks his opponents like a complete lunatic and tries to go on despite the referee stopping him. Moreover, at first he doesn't show any emotions, but when it comes to match he changes his personality immediately. Afterward, Guk reads his profile data and thinks that he has total of 10 wins and 1 loss. His history in X1 would be a total of 6 wins, with all 6 being the TKOs, and this means he is a successful fighter. Guk thinks Seong is exceptionally fast, has strong punching power, and is good at defending against grappling techniques. He then asks if Seong watched the match between Doohee and John Sicily. Seong replies that he did watch it and that Doohee won easily with a TKO. Even so, Guk explains that Doohee is far more weaker than Sicily and has a slower hand speed, but despite that, his punches would land first. Moreover, even if they punched each other at the same time, Sicily's punch still dealt greater damage. Guk explains that it was all due to Doohee's timing and accuracy. He punched half a beat faster most of the time, which made his punches land on Sicily first. Additionally, when they punched at the same time, Doohee used the small gap between dodges to move half a beat faster, allowing him to take control of the fight's rhythm. Ultimately, Guk tells him that this time he will be improving on 2 things, but Seong asks him if there are only 3 months left. But Guk replies that it's normally impossible, but if it's him, it might be possible because he naturally managed to win most of his matches so far. Later, Seong practices some body conditioning before starting with skill training. He does some CrossFit as a part of that conditioning and some pull-ups and push-ups, which are the most common exercises. Moreover, he has to finish these in just 1 set, and he gets 2-minute break between each set. But it takes him longer to finish each set as he progresses. Afterward, Seong asks Taeyoung how long he has to keep doing this, and Taeyoung replies that he needs to train like this 3 times a week. However, Seong tries to manipulate him by claiming that overtraining could make him lose muscle and even lead to muscle ruptures. Just then, Guk arrives and tells Seong that it's time for some technique training. He introduces a double end bag and asks Hyungwon to demonstrate how to use it. As Seong watches, he is completely shocked by what he sees. Guk explains that this originated from boxing and it's good for training his punch timings and accuracy. After trying for a while, Seong notices that the bag keeps bouncing at odd angles, but Guk explains that it's happening because Seong is treating it like a fixed target, which is why his punches keep missing and he can't maintain his balance properly. Next up is the tap ball, the best tool for training punch accuracy, dynamic visual acuity, and response speed. This time, Young-hun steps up and demonstrates his epic moves. When Seong tries it, he finds it fun and enjoys it more than anyone else. So Seung-hun tells Guk that it's the size that's used by pro boxers and he is talented. However, Hoon says it's a bit worrying because Seong did great. But Jeom couldn't fight the way he usually does. Seong realizes that Jeom underestimated him and was too worked, but if he had used wrestling, Seong might have lost. Later, Seong gets off the bus and thinks that he hasn't gotten used to the double end bag yet, despite having thrown a few punches. He then sees his mom standing in front of him, asking what she is doing this late. She replies that she came out to meet some friends for it's been a while. Afterward, she asks him why he is coming home late, but he replies that he had another match and needed to train for it. She then asks about the match he is preparing for to take the certification test, but he says he wants to do both at the same time since he has plenty of time. His mom freaks out at him, saying he won't be able to rest once he has an upcoming match, so he shouldn't do both at the same time. Seong finds it surprising. At first, she hated it whenever he talked about MMA, but now she seems to be slowly accepting it. Moving forward to May, after taking his sports training certification test, Seong leaves the center and heads back to the gym, where he informs Taeyoung that he will have to wait until the results are officially released to find out how he did. But Taeyoung says that he should focus on preparing for the match, and then he goes to practice the bag. Guk asks Taeyoung about how he is doing, but he replies that he has gotten used to the bag. But he is very sensitive and lethargic. Guk knows it's because of his weight reduction struggle, and there are 2 tough stages. The first one is flushing, which happens a week before the weigh-in. During this stage, a person loses water from their body, causing all physical abilities including muscle strength to drop. Moreover, there is a stage where they need to stop taking supplements and need to control their diet without any supplements, all while continuing with tougher strength training. However, Guk tells Taeyoung that he is keeping his promise to him and has improved even more with training this time. But since he is still young, he asks Sung-hoon to watch over him and help him so he doesn't have a breakdown. On day 5, Seong thinks to himself that he has turned into a mad dog. It's the same with training. Though the intensity is lower, he is still working with resistance bands, and his hands shake like an old man on his deathbed. He pees more than anyone else, and when he visits the medical center for a checkup, he feels like he might faint at any moment. Just then, Jin arrives and hands him over some snacks to help him ease his hunger. After looking at them, he notices that the peanuts have been peeled, and realizing that she is still here at this hour makes him feel like she cares about him. After she leaves, he gets a call from his father, who tells him some bad news about the hospital. Afterward, Seong rushes to the hospital and asks the receptionist if there is a patient named Kang. However, the receptionist responds with an annoying question, which frustrates Seong so much that he shouts, telling her that Kang-woo is his father. Just then, his dad, who is sitting nearby, says that others might think he died. Seong panics and asks him what happened to his head, but he tries to calm him down since there are other people around. However, Seong notices his clothes and finds it strange because he had left wearing office attire, but now he is dressed in worn-out clothes. Later, Seong asks him about his company's situation, but his dad replies that something happened that caused him to leave. He explains that since they still have some home loans to pay off, he has to work a job, even if it's at a construction site. Seong then realizes that his mom might be working too, and his dad confirms it by telling him that she is working at a restaurant. Even so, Seong feels sorry for both of them because even though they have been paying for the coaches while he trained with them, at first, he used to think it was the natural thing to do, and even his grandma had asked him to quit sports, but his dad wanted him to follow what he loved the most. Afterward, his dad scolds him, asking if he really thinks that he and his mom are doing this to lessen his burden or if he believes everything would have been fine if he had made a different decision. He says that he shouldn't be mistaken because both of them did this because they want to truly support him, and no one will blame this on him. Moreover, he tells Seong that they are not special because everyone faces problems in life, whether they're getting injured, struggling with money, or anything else. He adds that they have a kind and dependable son who always supports them, and they are confident that he will help stabilize their family's financial situation. Hearing that, Seong starts crying like a child and asks his dad if his head is fine. He tells his dad that their mom is going to beat them up over this situation, but his dad replies that he will be away on a work trip for 10 days. Seong then asks if his dad knows where his mom is working, but his dad tells him not to visit her because it would make her uncomfortable, but Seong insists that he will just watch from afar. Later, he goes to see her and realizes that she has been working hard, yet at home she never shown any signs of being tired. The next day, he heads to the gym and practices pad work with intense determination, and seeing this, Guk wonders why he is acting that way. Guk wonders if Seong has gained some kind of boost in his spirit, as he is now moving and dodging with minimal effort. Not only that, but he is also paying close attention to Taejun's timing and movements, reading them more accurately than before. Finally, it's weigh-in day and both Seong and Mizushima pass the test, but when it's time for their face-off, Seong notices that Mizushima is smaller than him. He also seems flawless since he didn't have to go through any weight reduction. Mizushima looks down, and at that moment, Seong realizes that he has always been the one looking up at his opponents, but for the first time, he has to look down. However, Mizushima activates his somewhat psycho ability, which makes him look like a crazy person, but Seong straight up tells him to stop acting like that, calling him a psycho cat. After the weigh-in ends, Hoon asks Seong why he keeps provoking Mizushima and what he says to him. Seong replies that he just kept saying no, which felt strange and creepy. He thinks that Mizushima doesn't care who he is since, to him Seong is just another opponent to defeat, but no matter what, Seong refuses to let himself be beaten. It's now the day of the match. Seong finishes practicing his pad work, and after he's done, Guk asks why he seems so calm compared to how he usually is. Seong replies that this match will prove his value, so he took time to think about it and wondered what his worth as a fighter really is. Guk then asks what answer he came up with, but Seong simply replies that he will show everything in the match. Just then, the previous match ends, and it's now Seong's turn to enter the ring within 10 minutes. The announcer introduces him as if he's some kind of Olympic legend, but this time his opponent is much tougher since he is ranked 7th in the lightweight class. Guk informs Seong that the match will be 15 minutes long and he shouldn't rush in until he has the advantage afterward. The match begins, but the announcer thinks that there is a major size difference between two of them, Seong looking bigger as compared to Mizushima. Both move at the same speed, mirroring each other's movements, but Mizushima attacks first, but Seong blocks it. He then follows up with a series of fluid attacks, but Seong dodges them using his upper body movements before countering with a low kick. However, it has no effect on Mizushima, who immediately launches another straight attack aimed at Seong's head. Afterward, Mizushima rushes towards Seong and uses a fake punch as a bait to get closer to him. He keeps attacking until he lands a hit. Numerous fighters have gone down because of those consecutive punches, but Seong seems to be doing well. Mizushima throws a punch with full power, breaking Seong's guard and forcing him against the fence. He then unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks, trying to completely shatter Seong's defense, but Seong manages to push him away and quickly dodges to the side. But Mizushima chases after him right away, wondering if there is nothing more enjoyable than beating people like Seong. However, his coach wonders if he didn't tell him not to get too excited, but Mizushima keeps attacking Seong with a relentless barrage of punches as if he's on fire. On the other hand, Hoon realizes that this is dangerous because, even if Mizushima is only hitting Seong's guard, using full power could still do serious damage. However, Guk thinks that Seong might be up to something, because it's not like he is letting himself get hit on purpose. Meanwhile, Mizushima has gone completely insane and rushes at Seong with more punches, but Seong blocks him and counter jabs on his face back. Guk realizes that Seong has done well in holding back since his opponent is throwing punches so recklessly, giving him plenty of chances to read his attacks. In the middle of the fight, Seong suddenly starts posing, asking the audience for some cheers. However, without saying a word, the referee orders both of them to stand up. Seong and Mizushima face each other once again, but this time, Mizushima is completely drained and can barely move. But Seong makes the first move and maintains his distance, while launching a barrage of jabs at Mizushima's ugly face. Seong's punching power is so strong that Mizushima couldn't do anything despite being so close in distance with Seong. Afterward, Mizushima tries to counterattack but gets hit by a double hook in return. He then falls on the ground for the second time. But as soon as he tries to get up, he gets knee kicked on his face. But he tries to get back. Seong then attacks him with another knee kick, not giving him any chances to recover, and because of this Mizushima's guard becomes unsteady. Then, Seong opens up his arms and approaches him, asking him to charge in if he dares. Seong then throws a punch at Mizushima, but he dodges with a quick sway and attempts to counter with a jumping hook from the side. However, Seong effortlessly avoids it without missing a beat. Seong starts teasing him with light pokes, which only fuels Mizushima's frustration. Enraged, Mizushima charges at him with a relentless barrage of punches, determined to land a hit. But as he keeps attacking, he quickly realizes that none of his strikes are connecting, leaving him confused and off balance. In response, Seong delivers 2 consecutive middle kicks, landing cleanly and forcing Mizushima to tighten his guard. Seong provokes Mizushima once again, pushing him to launch another attack, but this time, Seong swiftly counters with a quick jab. Without wasting a second, he follows up by smashing his elbow into Mizushima, causing him to bleed heavily. As he watches his opponent struggle, Seong thinks to himself that Mizushima needs to experience defeat firsthand to truly understand what others feel when they lose to him. Before the fight can continue any further, the referee quickly steps in and stops the match once again, bringing it to an end in just 1 round. The next day, Ting scrolls through the hub and finds tons of articles about Seong. Noticing that the community is reacting positively, Guk realizes that Seong has changed a lot. He used to be so indifferent. Just then, Seong receives a notification about his test results, confirming that he passed. Excited, he starts flexing, saying he should start looking for his passport and wondering about the weather there. He then calls his mom and proudly tells her that he passed the test and is going abroad. Meanwhile, what Seong was mistaken about was that while the results had been released, they were only for the written test. To get his certification, he still needs to pass the practical exam, the oral exam, and complete the required practical training. Later, Hoon gets informed about the entire situation because he is not going to go now. He freaks out at Hoon, saying he is the fool since he got tricked into believing that it will take only 4 months. However, Hoon tells Seong to go to Jin's place later because she is sick and has almost lost her voice, since she lives alone. There's no one to take care of her. Seong gets irritated and asks why he's the only one who has to go when there are so many other people around. Just then, 2 guys suddenly ask Hoon what she is sick with, claiming they live in her neighborhood. Hoon replies that the others are just creepy and only want to take advantage of her, so Seong is the only one he can trust. Hoon hands Seong a credit card and tells him to buy supplies, medicine, and food for Jin. Seong then asks if he can get something for himself too, to which Hoon replies that he can, but only if he brings back the receipt. Later, Seong arrives at Jin's apartment and is stunned by how successful she really is, realizing that she lives in an expensive apartment at just 23 years old. He rings her doorbell, and when Jin opens the door, he is shocked by how awful she looks. She quickly slams the door in his face, demanding to know how he found out where she lives. He replies that Hoon gave him the details and told him she was sick. After a brief pause, she opens the door again and lets him inside. Once he steps in, he tells her that he brought porridge for her to eat instead. Seong forces her to eat even though she doesn't want to, telling her it's bad to just lie around all day while being sick. Later, he asks when she first fell ill, and she replies that it was 3 days ago. However, Seong quickly realizes that she smells like rotten fish and probably hasn't bathed in nearly 3 days. Afterward, she compliments him on his performance in the match, admitting that she always thought of him as a loser, but yesterday he was on another level. Afterward, Jin confesses that she never liked Seong at first, admitting that she used to think he took for granted the opportunities that others couldn't have and just did whatever he wanted. But now, she realizes that wasn't the case. He's skilled, hardworking, and an amazing person to be around. She apologizes for judging him too soon, and just then, she starts feeling even worse, so Seong moves closer and checks her fever. It seems to be getting worse, likely because she has been overworking herself, since she has to endure tough training and weight reduction. She even fought 2 matches over 10 months while also participating in events like pictorials and advertisements. Afterward, Seong gently grabs her and tells her to get some rest. After giving her the medicine, she quickly falls asleep, but even in her sleep, she is talking about Seong being a loser. Meanwhile, he washes her dishes and finds a locked room. Upon opening, he finds tons of undergarments and messy clothes of Jin. The next day, the CEO of X1 visits Seong and says he is there because he has something important to do for them. He tells Seong that he wants to talk about his contract, but he was originally going to discuss it with Guk. But he has decided to talk to him instead. However, Seong tells him that he doesn't know much about the previous contract and asks if there is something special about it. The CEO explains that he is there to renew Seong's contract with them. He also mentions that SFC contacted them because they want Seong to join them. Seong asks why SFC contacted him instead of reaching out directly, but the CEO explains that they wanted his approval before making an offer. However, the CEO advises Seong not to go, saying it's too soon for him. He warns that even champions from smaller organizations struggle to survive there. Since Seong is still rising in his current place, the CEO suggests that staying a bit longer to build his career would be a better idea before making such a big move. The CEO also tells Seong that X1 will pay him more than SFC and that, considering other factors, staying with X1 would be the better choice. Seong then asks about the salary, but the CEO responds that the basic pay will be 8 million won, with an additional 10% as extra pay. Seong decides to leave the matter to Guk, saying he shouldn't make a decision so quickly. Guk then asks the CEO about SFC's reputation and the symbolism it holds beyond just the money. The CEO explains that SFC is the biggest stage in the world, and any fighter as skilled as Seong would naturally want the chance to compete there. However, the CEO replies that it's all in past because they are the kind of evil people who suck their fighters dry down to their bones. He further tells Guk to tell him their terms that they want, so Guk replies that they want 10 million won basic pay and 10 million won per win separately. Seong thinks about how starting at 20 million won would put his salary at the level of a national champion. Then, the CEO suddenly asks if that pay would be acceptable to them, shocking both Seong and Guk. He then states that he will offer 12 million won as basic pay and an additional 12 million separately. After that, the CEO explains that he will connect Seong with one of their sponsors, which will bring him an additional 30 million won per year. However, he makes it clear that this offer isn't free and will only apply if Seong wins his next match. Seong then asks what happens if he loses. The CEO replies that in that case, he will receive a basic pay of 10 million won and a 10 million won winning allowance. Guk asks him if he is hiding anything from them because he can't understand why he is being so generous. The CEO tells them that he is planning something special and wants Seong to be a part of it. After that, he gets ready to leave, but before walking out, he mentions that his meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. He also adds that they will officially sign Seong's contract after his next match. Later, Seong asks Guk if he hit the jackpot with that contract, but he replies that they have no idea if it's true yet. Seong asks if there is something bothering him, so Guk says that CEO Young isn't someone who would make a losing deal. Seong asks him if he is an evil person, but Guk tells him that he is not a type to survive by extorting fighters. After that, Guk advises Seong not to tell anyone about what happened today until everything is officially finalized. He then asks about Jin's health, but Seong responds that she is fine and won't die just because no one is visiting her. Later, Seong thinks about the offer he just received, realizing that if he wins his next match, he will earn a basic salary of 12 million won. He also considers that if he secures the sponsor's funding and allowance, his total earnings will reach 80 million won just by competing in 2 matches a year. Moreover, he feels happy about SFC paying attention to him, thinking if he tries hard, he could become the second SFC fighter after Yunchong. He then gets a call from Jin, who yells at him for entering her room without permission. He replies that he only went inside because he wanted to help her by cleaning her clothes. The next day, Seong and the others grab some pizzas and sit down to watch Yunchong's first match in the SFC against Nigerian fighter John Jones. After that, Yunchong dominates Silva right from the start, but when round 2 begins, he starts getting pushed back. By round 3, both fighters look exhausted, but Silva goes for a tackle. Before Silva's single leg attack can fully land, Yunchong manages to execute a front choke. Yunchong finally wins his first SFC match, and watching this, Seong realizes that both he and Yunchong are champions in their own organizations, yet they are still not ranked in SFC. Moreover, there are numerous fighters that are stronger than the two of them, but watching his match, Seong realizes that he made the right decision to renew his contract with X1 this time. Suddenly, the phone rings, and Seong answers it. The person on the other end asks why he is picking up instead of the coaches. Seong explains that today is Yunchong's debut SFC match, and everyone is watching it together. The person then says that he was considering suggesting Seong for the main match in September. Later, during dinner, Hoon notices Seong looking down and asks why he seems upset even though he received an offer. Seong asks if Hoon had a good time in America, but Hoon replies that he didn't have time for that since he had to rush between the training center and his accommodation every day. Hoon then asks if Seong has decided on his opponent yet, but Seong looks concerned. He says that there are 2 suggested opponents, but the one they are recommending is Para. Seong says that he never thinks about matching with a rank 1 and the second opponent is Yi-hun, who is also rank 3. However, Hoon tells him that both opponents are extremely tough. He first explains about Para, saying that his main techniques are the oblique kick, armbar, and diving elbow. He also mentions that none of Para's opponents have been able to return to the octagon after fighting him. On top of that, he is known to be a drug user who has been caught with vein injections, steroids, and almost every substance one can think of. Because of using these, he has been permanently blacklisted by 2 organizations, and other organizations refused to renew their contracts with him, and that's why he joined X1, who's the 5th to offer him a contract. Hoon then talks about Yi, saying that while he isn't as problematic as Para, he is just as skilled. His athletic performance remains consistent, and he is known as the Grim Reaper for low-ranking fighters. After hearing this, Seong says that Yi-hun might be the best option at this point, but Hoon replies that Yi-hun is known to have won 80% of his matches by decision. Additionally, decisions last for 3 rounds, but main events can go up to 5 rounds. Yi-hun has great stamina, so he wouldn't be affected by performance. Hoon tells him to analyze his opponents first before making any decision, and most importantly, he has to watch their fighting videos. Later that night, Seong spends 2 hours watching their fight videos, but he still feels clueless since both opponents will be tough for him. Frustrated, he curses Hoon for telling him so much about them. Then he gets a text from Guk saying he wants to talk about something important. After that, Guk responds, saying that he heard from Hoon about Seong having to choose between 2 fighters for his offer. He advises Seong to pick the one who will be the easiest for him to fight because people as skilled as him already know the inside of everything. Guk says that he is confident that he will train harder no matter who he is going up against. Meanwhile, Perera is having his family moment with his son in the park. Just then, Perera's coach arrives and tells him to keep his phone on, saying he had to ask his ex-wife about his location. Perera goes off on him, saying he only gets to see his son once a month. However, the bald man tells Seong that he received an offer from X1 for a fight in September. He also mentions that his opponent prefers to fight him over the other option, which would be beneficial for him. Perera ends up rejecting the offer, but the coach tells Seong that he has to give his response by noon the next day. Meanwhile, Perera complains that he has won 9 times, yet only the fighters who lost to him are the ones getting matches. Perera thinks about how he needs money this time and asks the bald man if he has any idea how much child support he has to pay. The bald man tells him that he should try to get on the good side of the organizations. He advises that if Perera stops taking candies and starts showing respect toward his opponents, he will receive better offers soon. The coach advises Perera to listen to the details of the fight before making any decisions, but Perera immediately tells him not to waste his time. However, when the bald man asks if he would still refuse even if they offered him a title shot and adds that they will do it if he wins this fight, Perera suddenly gets excited. He tells them to wait and puts the decision on hold and calls his son over and says they are going to a cafe. On the other hand, Seong is struggling with his own problems, and the chicken heads get mad at him for tapping out the second his opponent grabs his wrist. However, Seong explains that he already knows how the technique works, and there's no point in wasting time by trying to endure it any longer. Soo-hyuk asks Seong how he expects to fight high rankers in a real match with his weak skills. He then makes a deal with Seong, saying that if Seong can grip him even once, he will buy him lunch for a whole month. After that, they start practicing again, but Chicken Head goes in for a tackle instead. Seong grabs his leg and throws him to the ground. Soo-hyuk realizes that Seong's takedown is impressive, but he also knows that Seong might be thinking he can succeed if he gets his left hand under his arm and grabs onto his wrist. He then completely traps Seong's arm using his lower body and bends it against the ground. Seong tells him to let go so they can try again, but Soo-hyuk refuses. He says that he wants Seong to work harder, so it's good for him to experience some pain as well. Later, Hoon arrives and says he did good back then, even though he was set against Soo-hyuk, who is a karate family brown 4. Seong responds that he didn't succeed even once, and now he is not motivated to try again. However, Hoon notices something important. Most people can't even attempt a takedown on him, yet Seong managed to do it while also avoiding getting taken down himself. Since Seong has a similar body type to Soo-hyuk, and even Soo-hyuk couldn't pull it off, Hoon realizes that there aren't many fighters in the same weight class who could successfully take Seong down. Moreover, since Seong practiced Siram in the past, it actually works to his advantage because very few people have truly mastered it. Hoon thinks that Seong might lack certain skills, but once he learns them, he won't easily get caught by techniques. Hoon then tells Seong that X1 contacted them, informing them that he has been selected for a random doping test. He adds that inspectors will be coming tomorrow to collect samples like his hair and urine. However, Seong asks him if the supplements that he takes have any kind of doping contents in them. Hoon replies that their team has never failed before, but if he takes anything without telling them, then that will be different. Seong laughs it off and casually says that he won't eat anything except fried chicken. Just then, Hoon suddenly gets angry and demands to know if Seong ate anything suspicious. He then asks if the soy sauce was good, but Seong replies that he actually ate spicy marinade instead. The moment Hoon hears this, he completely loses his cool and starts yelling, frustrated that even though it has been a while since the match was confirmed, Seong is still eating things like that without any concern. After that, Hoon takes Seong to train with him and then serves him his own terrible salad dish. Hoon realizes that it has already been 2 weeks since they started this diet. Since Parra is physically stronger than Seong, they need to reduce the gap between them, even if just a little. To do that, Seong's normal weight needs to increase to 82 kilograms. Moreover, he has to stay properly hydrated, and since they can't eat carbs while training, they also have to cut down on salt, which traps water in the body. People who go through this kind of stress become aggressive, but Seong has never complained even once. Just then, Han receives a call from Guk, saying Parra is in their country and they need to prepare for the interview. Seong and Hoon arrive at the interview place, wearing a silly-looking suit. As soon as Seong walks in, cameras start flashing, taking pictures of him like he is some kind of celebrity. He greets the CEO, who asks if he is feeling okay since it is his first press conference. Seong tells him that he will do his best to act natural and then asks if there are any tips that might help him. But the CEO tells him to act natural just how he wants it to be. Afterward, they keep waiting for Parra. Someone whispers something in the CEO's ear and he informs everyone that Parra is currently in a traffic jam and will be late. Just like that, 20 minutes passes by and Seong wonders that Parra has no manners and even the CEO is getting angry. Finally, it is Seong's turn for the interview and he introduces himself as the fighter who will compete in the X1 Showtime 71 main event. Someone asks about his past, so he explains that his match against Jaehyun in September was his debut and his very first fight. This means he started without going through the league first. At that time, Jaehyun's original opponent was reported to be injured for 3 weeks, so Seong was brought in as a substitute. Afterward, another reporter asks Seong about his performance since his debut, mentioning that he has been dominating his opponents and winning all his matches in the first round. The reporter then questions how his training camp is organized and what his training is like. Seong responds that there is no special camp, but once his opponent is decided, they do a custom analysis and train with their teammates accordingly. Just then, CEO Yang wonders if this is his first press conference because every word he speaks draws attention and he knows how to attract attention naturally. Afterward, Parra enters the press conference looking even worse than a beggar. He walks towards Seong and greets him, making a remark that Seong looks like a girl who has no fight in him. However, as soon as he arrives, everyone starts throwing random questions at him. Instead of answering, Parra asks if they are truly curious about his determination. He then questions why no one is asking why he agreed to fight a kid or what kind of deal X1 offered him for the match. Parra reveals that if he wins this match he will get a title shot and tells them to put it in their article that this will be the outcome of this fight and next year at the latest, he will have a gold belt around his waist. The CEO then tries to end the press conference due to the time limit. However, Seong raises his hand and points out that the press conference is being held because the match still needs to happen. But Parra is acting like it's already over. A journalist asks Seong if he thinks he can defeat Parra, to which Seong confidently replies that he can. Just then, Parra directly asks if he really believes he will win. Instead of answering seriously, Seong acts cool and says that Parra is full of weaknesses and can't even focus on the match. Seong then starts making fun of his hairline, saying few more shots of steroids will help him with his receding hairline. CEO Yang tells Seong to refrain from criticizing Parra, but Seong simply apologizes and adds that he has to shave his head on the day of the match. Right after, Parra gets angry and throws a water bottle at him, shouting, demanding how he could say something like that. Seong stays calm and responds that he has always fought as an underdog, yet none of his opponents have made it past the first round. The only difference between them and Parra, he adds, is Parra's love for drugs. Later, Seong asks Yang if he ruined the press conference, but Yang reassures him that the reporters aren't clueless. He explains that they are aware of all the important topics, and the issue of drugs was something that already had arrows pointing at them as well. But the main thing is that Parra mentioned the title shot, which means his scheduled match will now be even bigger. Afterward, Hoon keeps an eye on Seong's diet, saying the extent of weight loss this time is high but the method to do so is easier. Usually, people use a sauna to cut weight at the last moment, but the risk of dehydration is high. On the other hand, using salts while taking a lower bath in water helps remove moisture from the skin and carries a lower risk of dehydration. Seong then sees Hwan stumbling around, struggling because his league match is the day after Seong's. Hoon mentions that Hwan will be 26 next year, so he needs to debut soon, and this is his only chance. Finally, it's the day of the match and Hoon scrolls through the internet and finds all the headless about Seong and one article about Pereira's title shot. Moreover, Pereira is still one of the strongest fighters in their weight class and most athletes don't even get the attention like how Seong got that day. Hoon then tells Seong to get ready because the co-main match is about to start. Seong looks at him and asks if there's something he should say to him. Hoon responds by telling him to forget everything about the fighting styles they just learned, leaving Seong looking completely dumbfounded. Later, the match begins, and the announcer is amazed by Seong because he breaks an MMA history record by reaching the main event just 1 year after his debut with only 4 matches. Just then, Pereira enters the ring and the announcer points out that Pereira is on the bigger side compared to Seong since he weighs more than him. Afterward, they stand in front of each other, and Seong realizes that he is shorter than Pereira and has a thinner waist, but he is still bigger than Giant. Then, the bell rings, and both fighters head to their corners. As they get ready, Pereira extends his hand forward. Seong assumes he is showing some basic etiquette and respect, so he moves his hand to tap. However, the moment he does, Pereira suddenly charges forward and throws a punch at him. Afterward, Pereira loses his cool and punches Seong repeatedly, but Seong can only keep his guard up. The chicken head asks Hoon why he is only guarding, because he is not someone who can be shaken like this. However, Seong gets pressed against the fence, and Pereira doesn't stop there, he keeps attacking relentlessly. The crowd starts panicking, shouting that he must be high on drugs again. Meanwhile, Hoon quickly tells Seong to move to the side, but Seong manages to dodge. Pereira immediately comes at him again with ruthless aggression. Watching this, Hoon realizes that Pereira isn't just trying to end the match. He seems to be planning to inflict as much damage on Seong as possible. Pereira then grabs Seong's legs, but Seong immediately stops his attempt to take down. Pereira then keeps on attacking Seong's face, wondering that after he beat him, the title shot will be next and after that he will become a champion. However, Pereira manages to slip a jab through Seong's tight guard, striking him directly in the face. In an instant, Seong collapses to the ground, leaving everyone stunned. Seeing his chance to end the match, Pereira quickly moves in to deliver one final punch. But just as he is about to strike, Seong suddenly reacts, dodging at the last second and countering with a powerful uppercut that lands straight on Pereira's face. Afterward, Seong wastes no time and immediately follows up with a powerful punch straight to Pereira's face, not giving him any chance to recover. Without hesitation, he then strikes with a sharp elbow, hitting him with full force. As the impact lands, Seong quickly realizes that Pereira's eye has started bleeding from the brutal elbow strike. Seong then unleashes a series of relentless body shots, striking Pereira over and over again without giving him a moment to breathe. As the attacks continue, Pereira's guard finally drops, leaving his face completely exposed, and Seong takes the opportunity to land a clean hit directly to his face. Even the announcers are left in shock, unable to believe what they are witnessing, as they begin to wonder if Seong's incredible attacks are purely a result of natural talent. Afterward, Pereira tries to get back at him, but he gets a kick instead and then Seong smacked his ear. Seong then starts flexing, raising his hands in the air, showing off with confidence. However, the referee quickly steps in and reminds him to follow the rules. Just then, Pereira spots an opening and attempts to grab Seong's leg, but Seong reacts instantly and smacks him in the ear once again. Afterward, Seong moves in as if he's about to tackle Pereira, making it seem like he's going for a takedown. But Pereira quickly realizes that when it comes to grappling, Seong's technique is weaker than his own, giving him an advantage in this situation. However, just as Pereira prepares to counter, Seong suddenly changes his approach and delivers a swift kick straight to his face. It turns out the kick was nothing more than a bait to throw him off and create an opening. Before Pereira can even react, Seong immediately follows up with a powerful high knee strike, driving it directly into his face. Completely caught off guard, Pereira fails to block in time and takes the full force of the brutal attack. Afterward, Seong throws him to the corner and fakes some jabs and hook, but he attacks him with a knee kick again. Seong then attacks him with continuous kicks, giving him no chance to recover. Pereira takes a 4-point position, which means both of his hands are on the ground, but still he gets attacked by a knee kick on his face. Pereira starts to grow frustrated because, no matter what he does, Seong keeps attacking him without slowing down. However, Seong refuses to let him escape, staying on the offensive and keeping the pressure on. The announcers lose their minds, completely shocked, as this is the first time anyone has ever provoked Pereira in such a way. Despite the relentless assault, Pereira doesn't panic and instead waits patiently, searching for the perfect opening to strike back while Seong continues throwing punch after punch. Pereira finally sees an opening and throws a jab at Seong's face, but Seong quickly dodges and counters with a strong elbow strike. Without slowing down, he attacks like a wild man who just got his strength back, landing hit after hit. The crowd watches in shock as Seong keeps going, not giving Pereira any time to fight back. After a while, the match comes to an end and Seong wins. In a surprising turn of events, Pereira, who hasn't been knocked out by anyone in over 6 years, is defeated in the very first round. Seong asks Hoon if he can do whatever he wants today without worrying about anything. Hoon sighs and tells him that he can do whatever he wants and he will take full responsibility for it tomorrow. As he says this, he wonders what crazy thing Seong is planning this time. Afterward, Seong gives an interview where a journalist asks him about the strong counter he used to turn the fight around. Seong explains that it wasn't really a critical situation, but it did take him some time to recover from those strikes. However, those hits actually helped him notice a lot of openings, which allowed him to turn the fight in his favor. The interviewer asks him if he wants to say something to everyone, but Seong replies in the mic, calling everyone who bets against him. He then says he has to say something to CEO Yang. Seong responds by saying the interview should be quick since the audience probably has other things to do as well. However, he first apologizes for ruining Pereira's golden opportunity, admitting that because of that, he even went as far as promoting him. Then, without hesitation, Seong asks for that title match opportunity to be passed on to him instead. Hearing this, everyone is shocked, and the CEO then looks at Seong seriously and asks if he has really thought this through, reminding him that a title shot is on a whole different level and questioning whether he is truly worthy of it. Seong replies that he is worthy of it because he ended all 4 matches this year winning first round. Moreover, from being just a backup to debuting and then to changing weight classes, he has overcome it all. The CEO replies that he will not give an answer right now because the current champion's opinion and other high-ranked fighters need to be considered as well, and without considering them, he can't give an answer. Furthermore, the CEO explains that Seong has never had to fight someone of a very low rank, and this match gave him the rare chance to go up against someone close to the champion's level. He then tells Seong that if he agrees to his request, it would be an abuse of his authority and other fighters might start demanding the same thing. However, after thinking for a moment, he decides to continue promoting the title match for Seong, causing the entire audience to erupt in cheers. Later, Seong runs into Young, saying it's been a long time since they last met. Young asks him if he is here to watch Hwan's match and asks about his injuries, but Seong replies that he doesn't have much. Young further asks him about Hwan's preparation. Seong responds by saying that he has been training hard lately, but Young quickly counters, telling him that someone like him who practices so intensely always ends up losing once he steps into the ring. Hearing this, Seong pauses for a moment and realizes that Young is right. On the other hand, Hwan has already gotten 4 opportunities in just 1 year, and even though there are countless fighters in every weight class, Young seems to have compassion only for him. Afterward, Young asks Hwan if he knows why he always yells at him during every match, but Hwan simply replies that it's because he isn't good enough. However, Young explains that the real reason is that he actually feels sorry for him since he was the one who put him on the team and pushed him so hard during training, making him work almost to the point of exhaustion. He did all of that because he believed Hwan had much more potential than the others, and he truly wanted to see him succeed. But despite all the effort and training, the moment Hwan steps onto the stage and stands in the spotlight, he turns into a completely different person, because he fails to show his true skills, ignoring everything he was trained to do and making far too many mistakes. Moreover, he says that the reason he yelled at him and pressured him, and they didn't put his trust in him, as the result he ended up making him unconfident in himself. He wondered if he was ruining him, but as his impatience increased, he was unable to look back and reflect on his actions. Young then grabs Hwan's shoulder and tells him that he can do whatever he wants in that octagon, and he will only coach him on what's important. Afterward, their match begins, and the opponent immediately rushes at Hwan, completely throwing off his rhythm. Young watches closely and realizes that the opponent is using the same strategy as before, so he hopes that Hwan will finally understand their pattern. However, as Hwan faces the endless barrage of punches coming his way, he quickly understands that his opponent has no intention of slowing down. He knows that if he tries to match the rhythm, he will be the one to break first. Making a quick decision, Hwan steps back but ends up getting punched in the face. Right after, Changsik tries to tackle him, but Hwan struggles and manages to break free just in time. Hwan then listens to Young's calls and manages to dodge his opponent's punch just in time before quickly going on the attack. He keeps throwing strikes, refusing to give his opponent any chance to recover. Afterward, he completely overwhelms him with a relentless series of heavy punches, not holding back for even a second. In that moment, he realizes that the reason he struggled before was that he had slowly been losing trust in his brother without even noticing. But now, with that doubt gone, he knows he is going to win no matter what. Afterward, just when victory seems within his grasp, H1 gets punched in the face. The impact is strong, but instead of falling, he endures the pain and forces himself to stay on his feet, completely shocking his opponent. As he stands there, he questions himself, wondering how many times he is going to lose. The thought of defeat lingers in his mind, and he realizes that if he loses this match, he might never get the chance to fight again. H1 then charges at his opponent and delivers a powerful high knee kick. The moment the kick lands, the announcers are left in shock, unable to believe what they just witnessed, as they have never seen such a spectacular move before. Without wasting any time, H1 immediately follows up by relentlessly pounding on his opponent, not giving him a single moment to recover. He doesn't stop for even a second, pouring everything he has into his attacks until he secures the victory and wins the match. Later, Seong tells H1 that he has never seen Taeyong as happy as he was today. With a smile, he then mentions that H1's dream of debuting as a pro has finally come true. However, instead of celebrating for himself, H1 sincerely thanks Seong, saying that it was because of him that his dream became a reality. He then admits that he had been planning to quit the team, which Seong had already suspected, knowing how much it had been bothering him to lose over and over again. H1 explains that every loss made him feel like he was falling further behind Seong and it was eating away at him. But in the end, he realizes that this sport is the only thing he has, and if he ever stops, he has no idea what else he would do with his life. However, Seong tells H1 that he is actually more amazing than him because the reason he never made it onto the SIRM team wasn't due to his injury, as everyone believed, but the truth was that he ran away. He goes on to explain that his injury was minor and he had fully recovered within 2 months, meaning he could have returned. But when the time finally came, he found himself feeling lost and uncertain. His friends had already moved forward. Some had signed contracts with teams, while others had earned scholarships. Meanwhile, no one had reached out to him, and he was left feeling completely alone. Seong then tells H1 that he is completely different from him because he didn't give up like a coward. He then evaluates H1's match and says that he only showed about 60% of his total skills, meaning he still has a lot of practice ahead of him. On top of that, Seong smirks and reminds H1 that since he debuted before him, he now has to call him senior. Hearing this, H1 immediately loses his cool and, unable to hold back his frustration, starts chasing after Seong. Who do you think will come out on top in Seong's next match? Comment Octagon if you'd like to see more of this series. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more content.